Welcome back, everybody. Jay Martin here, CEO of Cambridge House. And my next guest is Robert Kiyosaki, the author of the best-selling personal finance book of all time, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, in addition to like 26 other books that Robert has published. Now, Robert is probably the truest definition of a capitalist that I've ever had on the show. And as a consequence, this interview probably is going to offend some people because Robert pulls no punches when it comes to his perspective on how the world functions and why the world functions the way it does. Because at the highest level, it comes down to a few people playing a game, and most of the population are pawns in that game. And that's his perspective. And he's built a life out of fighting to get to the top of that game. And it was a fascinating discussion. I love perspectives like this. I try to let my guests say whatever they think, whatever they feel, and not cut them off so we can hear as many perspectives as possible, which, as you know, is my core ambition with this YouTube channel, is to gather as many opinions, as many perspectives as possible so that I can then steal what works for me, erase or neglect what doesn't suit me or fit my profile, but craft my own strategy based on the eclectic mix of personalities that I have on this show, and I hope you get that value as well. So if you enjoy this, as always, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and I publish a weekly newsletter. It's free. I publish every Friday where I share my biggest takeaways and lessons learned from conversations just like this and plenty others. There's a link right beneath this video in the pinned comments where you can subscribe. I'd love to have you join the team. Here's Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Enjoy. What I love to do is introduce the right people to the right people, assemble the smartest people I can think of or reach out to carry that conversation, and that's exactly what I've done today. Please give my panel a round of applause. Welcome. Okay, guys, Jay Martin here, CEO of Cambridge House, and I'm joined right now by Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and 26 other books. But still today, this is the best-selling personal finance book of all times. Robert, it's a real honor having you on the show. Thanks so much for making the time.
Well, it's my pleasure. I mean, you do a very good job of interviewing. Thank you. You do. You ask great questions and you get to the point. So I've watched your show many, many times. So congratulations.
I really appreciate that. That means a ton. I mean, you inspired a whole generation of people that do what I do. It's that sovereign mindset approach to wealth generation, looking for the alternative path, thinking outside the box, and carving your own path when it comes to building wealth. And maybe that's a good place to start. I'd love to know what got you, for someone who hasn't read your books or isn't as familiar with who you are, what was the catalyst for you to start thinking outside the box when it came to generating wealth?
Well, Jay, I think it's very important. August 15th, 1971 was when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. And that's why our economy is in this very precarious position today. And we have never been here in the history of the world. I mean, we printed more money in 10 years than we have in the last 10,000 years. It's just crazy. So what happened on August 15th, 1971, the 50th anniversary is coming up, is what kind of inspired me to question things. As I was saying to you when I first talked to you, I'm impressed with your generation because you guys are far more aware of what's going on, at least financially, macroeconomically, than any other generation in history. Of course, a lot of your generations got their butts up their butts, as you know, but they should be listening to you. But my generation, the boomer generation, we were clueless. So when August 15th, 1971 came, what people don't realize was right after that, we broke the agreement of the Bretton Woods Agreement, 1944. We promised the world the dollar would be backed by gold. Going back in time to 1933, it was FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who everybody loves. The guy was a hardcore Marxist. He made owning gold illegal. And so 1933, 1944, you got to study history, Bretton Woods, 71, Nixon screws the world. But this is the thing that happened, Jay, that really screwed my generation of boomers. 1974, ERISA was passed. And ERISA stands for No, I don't know. So it's 401k. Income Retirement is Security Act, ERISA anyway. The 401k was born in 1974. So today you have my generation, the boomers, they're hanging on by a thread due to historical events coming in. So now the stock market is at an all-time high. It's nuts. And the reason it's all-time high is because our CEOs are borrowing money from the Treasury to repurchase their own stocks. So we don't have a real economy. We don't have a real stock market. And the US, the Fed is greatly in debt. The US is greatly in debt. So your generation is far more aware. But my generation, my concern is the market is going to come down. Stock market, bond market, real estate market. And my generation is not prepared for it, because they're not as turned on or aware as much of your generation is. It's such a paradox of what's going on. So like most of your generation, their heads are up their butts, but they should be listening to you. And I'm always impressed when I see younger guys asking far more sophisticated questions than most of my peers could ever ask. So that's why I watch your program.
Interesting. Okay, there's a ton in there that I look forward to unpacking. And, I've heard you talk about the risk of relying on the 401k, which, essentially that to me, it's like having blind faith in your retirement plan, right? Having blind faith in your future by just trusting a separate entity to be looking out for your best interest. In this case, the 401k, which is tied to stock market that continues to hit all-time high valuations, completely decoupled from the economy, by the way. And you see this as, a black swan event by definition is something you don't see coming, but we're saying we see this coming and this is going to smack a lot of people very hard.
Yeah, but you can see it if you're aware. And so that's why I commend you and your generation for being more aware than my generation. So the thing that happened in 74 was very, very important. Back in 1950s, when I was a real little kid, I was working with my rich dad, who was my best friend's father.
Yeah.
He had executives at his company that played the stock market. So this is the 50s and the 60s. And my rich dad said, anybody who's in the stock market's a gambler. And so I don't do business with gamblers. And I still remember that. So when I talk, a lot of my friends are not in the stock market. So this is the point. Back in the 50s and the 60s, prior to 71, when they took the dollar off the gold standard, you could save dollars because they weren't printing it. It was backed by gold. You see, 1944 to 71, you have to look at history. So it was really smart to be a saver of dollars. It was also smart. My rich dad didn't really save money. He built projects. He built big projects. But he bought bonds. So the smart money back in the 50s and the 60s was in bonds and savings because they didn't print money. If you can get your head around that one. And so today we're printing 120 billion a month in the US. I mean, this is insanity. So my message is, so 1974, they sent my generation into the 401k, Canada's RRSP, Australia's a superannuation, Japan's a 401k. So you have a whole generation, the old guys like me, who are hoping and praying that stock market stays up.
Yeah.
And because they print money, and money was so cheap, the CEOs were borrowing the money to buy their stocks. I mean, talk about a nut house. So this is the final thing, okay? There's a saying that goes, the bull goes up the stairs. The bull goes up the stairs, the bear comes out the window. It's a very important investment strategy. What happens in a bull market is that at the top, people are happy. Please remember that, Jay. I mean, I can't even get reservations to eat. Places are packed. Biden's sending out checks. People are getting checks for having kids, for having puppies, to give you checks. And so everybody's euphoric. So here we are at the top of a bull market. But when the bear goes out the window, it comes down so fast. Like I think it was Ernest Hemingway who said, how did you go bankrupt? Slowly at first, then suddenly.
Yeah.
The suddenly is coming. So my message to the Cambridge House group and all this right now is start shifting your attitude to depression. How are you going to get rich when everybody's depressed? I want you to think about that, because Jim's Records, is a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
The Great New Depression. We're going to a depression. And my generation has never been through a depression. My family was. So we're heading into the next Great Depression. So unless it sounds pessimistic, but the bull goes up the stairs. Everybody's happy. Champagne's flowing. I can't get a reservation. But when that bear comes down, a depression is emotional. People are depressed. So I don't mean to be a pessimist, but I'm saying get prepared to how you're going to make money when people are depressed. That's when you get rich. You make more money in a crash than you do in a boom.
So let's dig into that a little bit. I could speculate based on what you just shared that you're sitting heavy in cash right now, preparing for opportunity.
It could be. It could be anything. I'm just saying, be prepared for people being depressed. And then you'll see a different market emerging. I'm still investing. I'm doing all that. I don't stop.
Right.
But I'm not, I bought a lot of real estate also just last couple of months ago, another $160 million worth of real estate. But the reason we're doing that is because we know U.S. is becoming a nation of renters. And there's so many houses that are going into a foreclosure right now that the migration will become out of homeowners into apartment renters. So we're preparing for the depression. If that makes sense to you, I'm not saying I'm depressed. I'm just saying to your age group, be prepared for an economy where people are depressed. And you'll see a different economy.
So if you're talking to an investor who's been in the market for less than a decade, and there's a lot, that population of new investors, to your point about the younger generation being more aware that they need to take control of their finances. And I want to dive into the why, but I definitely see that trend. And the big risk I see there is that if you've been in the market for 5 years, 10 years, 12, 13 years, the market does one thing. It goes up, right?
Yeah.
A little bit, and then it goes up again.
You got it, Jay. Your generation has only known really up.
Yeah.
The bull goes up the stairs. At the top of it, people are euphoric. It's like this. Is that Robinhood app went public or something like that? It's all this is an app by a SPAC.
Yeah.
This is nuts. And your generation is aware, but they're gambling right now. Do you know what I mean? You have a generation of gamblers because they're in the stock market. So let me say it again. My rich dad, when I was a kid, he says only gamblers are in the stock market. But what happened in 1974, they pushed my generation into the stock market. So all across the world, Jay, right now, is you have old guys like me who are happy because the stock market is high. And if I'm correct, the bear is about to take a leap out the window. Slowly at first, suddenly. And your generation has really only known a high, except for 9/11. It's the only high. I know you guys are probably too young for 2008, but 2008 was almost a depression, but they just pumped trillions of dollars into it.
Yeah.
So the problem was never fixed yet. So the problem has got 10 times worse in 2008.
Yeah. No, and you can go beyond the stock market. If you talk about those valuations, real estate, another play, right? My parents' generation, that was the move. You borrowed money, bought real estate, retired on that home equity. Right. It's a very tried and tested path, one that now, we feel inclined to follow. Now, you just invested a ton in real estate, but you're in a different position than most, Robert. What do you feel about, so here's some real life experience. I bought a house 3 years ago, and I was convinced I bought at the top of the market. And if I wasn't buying my family's principal residence, I never would have done it. but I was like, this is a 10, 20-year residence, so I'm okay with the valuation. However, 3 years later, it's only been 3 years, my realtor's calling me and trying to get me to sell for an 80% return after 3 years.
Right.
That kind of froth and mania just raises red flags all through my brain. I'm like,
Right.
I get very, very concerned. So what are your thoughts on real estate today for the average, 1-2 property investor?
Well, as I say in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the purpose of a business is to buy real estate. So I'm always buying real estate, but I study. I'm a student of real estate. My partners are all real estate professionals. We're not gamblers. And most people are gamblers. So let me just tell you, I have the same appreciation. I have one of the best houses in all Hawaii, right on the beach on Diamond Head. It has gone up from 2 million to 12 million. That's a lot of money sitting there. Okay.
Yes.
And so they say, do you want to sell it? Now, if I sell a $12 million house, I have a capital gains. I pay taxes on it. So what I do is I borrow out $5 million. I borrow out the equity and I invest it in other companies.
Okay.
So I'm not saying everybody should do what I do. My strategy, what happened in 71, the US dollar became debt and taxes. So this guy is like these characters who say live debt free, and most people should live debt free. I'm $1 billion in debt because what happened in 71, the dollar became debt, and the more I borrow, the less tax I pay. Trump does the same thing. That's why in 2015, when Hillary Clinton nailed him for saying, well, you don't pay any taxes, he said, that means I'm smart. You see, the smart guys don't pay taxes, but we make millions of dollars. So I'm saying on this deal, in Hawaii, where I bought it for $2 million, it's now $12 billion. I borrow out $5 million at, I think, 2% or 3%.
Yeah.
And then I reinvest it. But I pay no capital gains because debt is tax-free. So I made $5 million, let's say. I just sit it on the sideline parked. I'm still making the same payments on the $2 million house.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm not saying, please don't say, oh, Robert said to borrow money. I don't. If you're an idiot, don't do anything. Let's get a 401k and RRSP and save money. You know what I mean? That's what idiots should do.
Right. Yeah. And so, following that thought, are you concerned at all about, because I can hear my audience right now saying, but what if the market crashes and Robert's overexposed on his currently valued at $12 million property, but he's borrowed $5 million against it, and the value crashes back to 3 or 4. Is that a scenario that you think about?
Of course, you've got to think that, but they think I'm at risk. I'm not at risk at all because I'm just going to reinvest that money, and the interest rates are like 2%.
Sure.
And the reason I love Canada so much is because I started on the Vancouver where all the Frito Banditos hang out. Yeah. I mean, there's more criminals in Vancouver, and they're all my friends. I was in the mining business, so Jay, I'm a real criminal, because everybody, what's the definition of a liar? It's a gold miner standing next to a hole in the ground. That's all we were doing. So I love Vancouver, and when I migrated my company over to Toronto, I did it only for one reason: is I wanted to find out how criminal the stock market is.
Okay.
Bullshit. It's worse than real estate. I'm not kidding you. Jay, I'd have a hole in the ground and people would give me money for it. And my teacher was this guy named Frank. He took like 20-something companies public, all on the New York and in Canada. He liked Canada because it's a resource guy. I learned more about the stock market hanging out with Frank. So what we would do, I'm not proud of myself, but so we find this hole in the ground. I mean, in fact, there wasn't even a hole. It was just, we'd get a claim, say, okay, this piece of this 10 acres is ours. We'd find a newsletter writer, because that's what they had in old days. Then they have social media.
Yeah.
So let's say it's Joe Schmo. He's writing newsletters. I say, hey, Joe, pump this stock for us. So Joe would sit there and he'd write these glowing reports on what a hot find we have. We got 5 acres in this, or someplace in the Yukon, or somebody else in Alberta or something. And the money would pour in, Jay. There's nothing. There's nothing there.
Okay, so
Jay, I learned more in Vancouver than I could have in prison. I know, Jay. I was ecstatic. I mean, just because you hang out with these guys doesn't mean you have to do what they do.
Yeah.
But I was learning how they think. I loved it. And so most of my friends are entrepreneurs. They don't have jobs,
It's amazing to hear you share these stories. And I want to provide some background for people who aren't so familiar with the mineral exploration business, which is largely headquartered in Vancouver. That's what you're referring to. There's a fantastic quote. I believe it was Steve Forbes who said, this is like in the early 80s, if you're faint of heart or slow of wit, stay clear of the Vancouver Stock Exchange. And, the story you shared about acquiring some property, getting the mineral claims to a property, and then hiring some promotion to promote the potential of discovering a large gold deposit, silver deposit, copper deposit, hyping up the story, getting investors to finance the deal with potentially nothing in the ground. I mean, so, that's in your quote, what's the definition of a gold mine? It's a hole in the ground with a liar standing on top of it. I'm familiar with all this stuff because I grew up in Vancouver, right?
Yeah,
and so I know this industry. And what I love about that, because I'm a bit of a cowboy in that I like to think outside the box and think for myself. And Vancouver requires you to be incredibly sharp because of
that's it.
The character.
You got to be 10 times smarter in Vancouver than in New York.
It forms your character very, very effectively, right? Which is a fantastic, schooling to receive. You shared a bit, on what you could call the criminal nature of some of these speculative industries or even real estate. I want to tie this back to something earlier that you said about, my generation and younger being more aware about the future of their wealth. Why do you think that is? Because when I think, why would somebody become more aware or try to become more aware? It's because they would have a decreased amount of trust in the current system and therefore would want to start exploring options outside of the system, leading them to understand things better. Do you see that? Do you think there's an increased lack of trust that's leading to this increased desire to understand the movement of money and the flow of money and the way the world really works?
Well, I also think it's technology. I mean, there was no YouTube, when I was a kid.
Sure. Yes.
So you guys like you pop up, to do what you do today would have cost about $20 million in the 70s. You'd have to set up a whole TV station and all this stuff.
Totally.
To do it. So today you guys can pop up for $1,000, you're in business. You can compete with CNBC and Fox News and all this stuff. So that makes your generation far ahead of my generation. I'm not saying any smarter. I'm just saying more aware. It's like when I saw those guys jumping into Robinhood and all this, I said, we've all seen this show before. Hopefully they'll make it. We don't know. But I've been part of that process. If I could say one thing more too, is my teacher, this guy named Frank, he said the difference between my lies and your lies are my lies come true. In other words, we make these promises, which just hear the logic. He says, if we make these projects, and we're selling penny stocks, you could buy 100 shares for $1. So we're selling penny stocks. It put the onus on us to make it come true.
Yeah.
So that's what you were saying. We have to be smarter, better, faster with less money. Now that deal I pumped from Vancouver through Toronto Stock Exchange, we struck the biggest gold mine in China. It's in Dalian province. I was a billionaire for about a year. We did find gold. We did promote it. We raised $27 million US for it. And then when all the assays came true, they said, you have, $1 billion in gold sitting here. They were true. They were facts. There wasn't blues. It wasn't, they call it moose pasture, the bullshit. You have $1 billion find here. As soon as that happened, guess what happened?
What?
Chinese took it.
Yeah.
So I don't love the Chinese that much anymore. And you guys have a lot of Chinese in Vancouver. I'm not blaming the people, but I'm a Marine pilot. I killed a lot of Chinese communists. I don't like them. They shot at me. They shot down my friends and all this. So when you get into the money markets, it's the same deal. You got to watch out who you're dealing with. Chinese are smarter than white guys.
That's
a backhanded compliment. You can catch that.
Oh yeah, I did.
Japanese are stupid. Japanese are really stupid. They save money. Chinese are really smart. So I'm not against the Chinese people. It's the Chinese government. I fought those guys before, for real.
As you're walking through this, I can hear my audience getting loud because, I invest aggressively in the commodity sector, specifically in the early stage, highly speculative mineral exploration, right? That's where I spend a lot of my time.
Yes.
And I can hear my audience and CEOs that I talk to saying, why are you talking about our industry this way? Like we're a bunch of scammers. But honestly, this hits the nail right on the head because everything I talk about when it comes to the high risk speculation stuff is like, I'm all about the people over everything else every single time. And I get a lot of crap for that, Robert, like sometimes from, a technical geologist background investor, and they say, oh, you're missing you're not looking at the geology, you're not looking at the rocks and the core samples. And I say, I don't have time because I invest in the food sector and the health sector and in the mining sector. I don't have time to be an expert in all those things, but I can know people, right? And when you write a check, you're investing in the integrity, the judgment, the decision-making ability of one or two individuals, right? It's not the product or the industry. You're investing in, you're letting someone have an adventure with your money. So you do trust them, right? To make their lies come true, as you said, right? That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, please listen to what Jay is saying. It was my team that I trusted. I had some of the best guys out of Toronto. Some of the best stock guys like Burns Fry back then and all this stuff. They had the highest of integrity. They knew the game. They knew a lot of times there's nothing there. But that meant we had to be 10 times smarter. You buy Amazon, you can be an idiot. Buy Apple, you can be an idiot. You're okay. So if you're an idiot, buy Apple and Amazon. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
But if you like the Wild West, and that's what I enjoy, that's why I'm an entrepreneur. I don't have a job. I don't want a job. I don't want job security. I was a Marine pilot. We flew in Vietnam killing communists every day. I liked it. They killed us. We killed them. But, you come back and I go, God, life is kind of boring here in the States. So that's why I was in Vancouver. I really know, Jay, I loved it there. I loved every guy would pitch a deal. And the game. I'd be in the hotel room. They'd send a beautiful young lady to convince me, you know what I mean? And something like that. I said, thank you. I don't do that stuff. Because it's all there to test your will, your morals, your discipline.
Sure.
Always tested. Because every deal sounds good. Every beautiful woman is gorgeous. The vodka is just as good in Canada as it is in the States. So is the Scotch, so is the beer. I love Molson. I love Labatt Blue. It's a game. But you got to know who's on your side. And my team was solid as shit. They're tough as nails. The best attorney, I can't mention his name, but man, he was way up there on the TSC. And he wouldn't we wouldn't do anything that would jeopardize his position. So it is the team that goes in. And the rest is just, as they used to say, moose pasture. It's just a piece of dirt. You hope something's there. And we went all over the world. My first mine was in Peru, then in Mongolia, then China, and then Argentina and Portugal. It was the best experience. I was back at war. It was exciting. And average guy should have, a daytime job with a 401k or RSP. That's 99% of the market, but those guys feed us. I like the adventure. If you don't like the adventure, Don't do it.
Mm.
I joined the Marine Corps for one reason. Every guy in the Marine Corps was there for one reason, to kill. We're fighters. So if you're going to battle, go with Marines. Don't go with Coast Guard. Coast Guard guys want to save lives. Our job is to take lives. So when you hang out in Vancouver, man, you better have a strong team behind you and a lot of willpower, because some of those women they sent to my room, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. I didn't partake. I'm a happily married man. I didn't do it. But that's the game. You know the game, Jay.
Well, yeah, I do. And you're pointing to some very important risks that exist in the speculative sector, right? That any company can finance enough to promote, right? And try very hard to convince you that they're the winner. They're the gem, right? The diamond in the rough. And that's why I default back to, okay, but who's the decision maker? And do I trust their integrity? What's their track record? You know, success begets success. I'm not opposed to betting on the rookie, not at all. But I'm far more likely to look at the individual who's already had one or two wins behind them and say, okay, right, some of this risk is taken care of. And and my audience knows this on the show, we maybe have about 5% of the CEOs that list companies on the venture exchange on the program, just because I say I can't help you pick the winner, but I can help you cut out the losers. I know how to do that very, very well.
Yeah.
The first step is get rid of the 90% that don't deserve your attention. They're going to send that lady to your hotel room or do whatever, hire the promotion, and it's unjustified.
Can I tell you a story?
Of course.
Because that's how I learned. I'm a Marine. I'm an entrepreneur. I did pretty well in business, but I wanted to try the Wild West of Vancouver. So this is how I learned stuff. So we were drilling for oil in Portugal, and everybody said, well, there's no oil in Portugal. Okay. So we're drilling away. The assets are coming back. The price of the stock's going up and up. This is what I'm saying. The bull goes up the stairs. The bear goes out the window. So we're all excited. The drill's going down and all this. It looks positive. There's carbon coming up and all this stuff. And suddenly the stock drops like a rock. And what happened? I mean, Jay, we're as close to the inside as possible. They couldn't get closer to us. I said, who has closer information than we do? And my partner, Frank, looked at me and says, the guy on the oil rig did.
Interesting.
He says, it's always insider trading. The question is, how close to the inside are you? I learned so much in Vancouver, Jay. I don't recommend it, but it was the best real life education I've ever had.
Sure. Yeah. I get it. Okay. Now I want to jump into the macro a little bit right now, Robert. Like, what's catching your attention? We talked about just sky high valuations that we believe are unsustainable. A conversation that we're having on my channel a lot right now, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is the inflation versus deflation debate, right? And it's very easy, I find, to argue for inflation because you feel it in your wallet, right? Whether you're, building a shed in your backyard, buying 2x4s, looking at your home valuation, the price of food, any durable goods is all sky high, but that's just a piece of the picture. And it's enough, though, to drive the media to start talking about sensational headlines like runaway inflation. And I don't buy it. But what do you think? Is this a worthy conversation, or how do you feel about that?
Well, it's a good question because it depends on who you listen to. I mean, one of the advantages today are guys like you with YouTube channels. And you guys interview guys. And you have one guy like Lacey Hunt, says it's going to be deflation. Other guys say it's going to be inflation.
Yeah.
And the purpose of you as the investor or the person is, what's this guy, F. Scott Fitzgerald says, the definition of an intelligent mind is to be able to hold two opposing points of view at the same time. So one person says inflation, one person says deflation. And intelligence means somewhere in between, I'm going to make my decision.
Yeah.
When people ask me about that, I say, I don't give a shit. I've been preparing for this crash since 1971. I have so much gold and silver and Bitcoin stacked to the ceilings because in 1970, it was actually 72, I started When Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard 50 years ago, August 15, 1971, I could see the future. At that point, I don't save dollars. I save gold, silver, Bitcoin, and I borrow money. So as long as the banks are giving me borrowing money, I'm borrowing money. You know, my last investment was $160 million. And of course, it's held in a different corporation. So it's far away from me. You know, if the thing crashes, as they say, the bank has a problem. I don't have a problem. It's the game. You know, and if I could leave one message to all you young viewers, there's a game being played out there that's so far beyond Robinhood and YouTube and all that stuff. The game of capitalism is a very sophisticated game played by very smart people, not all honest. But if you don't want to play that game, buy Apple, buy Amazon, have an RRSP or a 401k, and get a safe, secure job with the teachers union. I'd shoot myself if I did that.
Right. Yeah.
So it all depends upon you. All I'm saying, Jay, is it depends upon you, the person listening to the show right now. What's stirring in your gut? You know, I don't really care because it goes up or goes down. That's what I'm saying, is that the bull goes up the stairs, and the bear comes out the window. Prepare for a depression today while people are high as kites.
Yeah.
That's how I think. You know, I'm a helicopter pilot. I went down 3 times in Vietnam, but we're prepared for it every single time. We knew it was coming. The aircraft always gave us warning. Engines going out here, taking shots here, and all this stuff. But the Marine Corps prepared us for the crash, and I'm doing kind of the same thing today, is preparing people for the crash. So let me tell you this. You know, like Joseph Kennedy, who was President Kennedy's father. You know, he said he was in New York City, and this shoeshine boy, a taxi driver, had a hot tip for him in the stock market. This was 1929. So Joseph Kennedy said, sell everything. He says, when taxi drivers are giving you tips, it's time to sell. So in 2008, I was at Safeway right next to my house, and the checkout girl was giving me her card. She says, I flip houses. And I said to Kenny McElroy, my partner, said, looked at each other and said, it's time to sell. The crash is coming. Not that we're going to sell, but we're prepared for the crash, the depression. There was a depression. So 2 nights ago, with my other friend, we're all real estate guys here, massive, massive developments in Idaho and Arizona. We're looking for a place to eat. We can't even get a reservation because the bears at the top of the market. Everybody's euphoric. You know what I mean? They're happy as Larry. They're drinking, champagne's flowing. We walk in, and all these women are in evening gowns. And one was this, I still remember, it was this bright gold, looked like gold coins or something. Another had white and all this stuff. So a friend of mine said, well, was it a high school prom? I said, no, these women haven't seen a prom for about 4 decades. They were celebrating, they were sucking down the champagne and all that. So my next door neighbor and I said, it's like the shoe shine while the taxi driver giving you a tip. It's like the Safeway checkout girl saying, I flip houses. I looked at my friend, this is about 3 nights ago. I said, it's time to sell. Because when the bear goes out the window, it's going to come fast. Faster than you know. Slowly at first, then suddenly. If I could pass those words of wisdom on as a seasoned investor, that's what traps people. At the top of the market, they're happy. At the bottom of the market, they're depressed. And that's when you make your money, when people are depressed.
And, I don't know if there's an easy way to learn that lesson other than just getting served it, the hard way. And what I mean is, pick an asset, right? We talked about the stock market, about real estate. Recently we had this big frothy Bitcoin market that has since corrected. And when you enter an asset and then, you receive a 100% return and then 150% return and then a 200% return, how it's tough if that's your first rodeo to respond to that with anything except not only was I right, I was far more right than I thought I was. And I'm more right today than I was a month ago because my valuation's gone up. And your conviction just compounds and compounds and compounds until it starts to delude you. And I don't know if you can truthfully, unless you've lived the free fall on the other side of that you can really, really understand and change accordingly. It's something we can talk about all day long, because similar, like I watch cycles for a living, Robert, like whether it's a gold market, a Bitcoin market, a broad equities market, whatever. And I see the same indicators, right? Exactly what you're talking about. And I look at things like Twitter sentiment, right? How evangelical is the Twitter sentiment becoming? And, we saw this a month and a half ago with the Bitcoin price. It was like, you couldn't mention the word on Twitter without just being attacked. If you were bullish, it was like the whole world's on your side. If you were bearish, it was just have fun staying poor, blah, 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 blah. And of course there was a correction, right? I didn't sell. I hold Bitcoin, and for me, it's a 10-year trade. And so I have the benefit therefore of not sweating the monthly price. But yeah, I don't know. It's funny. You can tell somebody that all day long, but I think you have to live it. You have to live the other side of a bull market, which is.
Well, and that's why I appreciate you allowing me to talk about this, because everybody was, what's the price of Bitcoin going? What's real estate going to do? I said, look, you got to step back and look at markets.
Yeah.
All markets go up, all markets come down.
Yeah.
And this has been running since 2008. It's a long bull market. So just remember, a depression is when people are depressed. And I think this next depression will be a long one. I would be preparing for that now. It doesn't mean I still buy real estate, I still buy this. But I study, I listen to guys like you or your guests and things like this. And you say, is it going up or down? Who cares?
Right.
Are you prepared for whatever happens? That's the thing. So right now I have millions and millions of dollars of gold not stored in this country. I mean, I don't hold ETFs or stocks. I hold physical gold in different parts of the world. I also have a jet. I will get to it by myself. So I'm prepared.
Interesting.
At a lot of the more major airports have these special little hangars where the rich guys taxi up on their jets, and the money is scooped into the plane and it's gone.
Sure.
It's a different game. That's what I learned in Vancouver. Yeah, you know what I mean? So I talked to young guys and said, aim high. Really, really, really look at it. Like this guy, what's his name? He said Bezos and Musk and all these characters flying in space. I just want my Layer 60. I don't need to go in space. I just need a jet. I can get out of town fast. And I can move. I can pick up my money in different parts of the world and keep going.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a plan for depression, man.
It's an excellent plan, and
it takes a while.
It takes a while. It takes a while. Now, I want to see if you can make this relative to someone who doesn't have the jet, doesn't have millions of dollars in gold stored in various countries. Instead, they're in their early 30s, right? They've got maybe $100,000 in the market. They'd love to get into real estate. They haven't yet, or they're in that scenario. Maybe they own their first apartment, whatever it is. But Robert, what's depression preparation look like for somebody in that scenario, the sub-millionaire?
Well, I really don't know, because I never had any money anyway. It was one of the blessings I had. My father never paid for my education. So I've always been a scrambler. I never had any money. So if you're a mommy's boy or a daddy's boy, and mommy and daddy gave you all your money, paid for your college education and all that, you're actually handicapped, because you don't know what it's like to scramble. Do you know what I mean? You just don't know the game. You want mommy and daddy to give you the lollipop or something. So you actually get smarter in a depression if you have your wits about you, because there's going to be more opportunity and all this. So right now, I've been listening to your channel, listening to all the people that come on. And I'll listen to Schiff. He hates Bitcoin. He's still a friend of mine. George Gammon's a good friend of mine. Jeff Snyder. I mean, these are very smart people. Mm. But I still have to make my decision. So I never had any money, so I've never needed money. It's really strange. That's why I was in Vancouver raising money, because I didn't have any money. Mm. If you could it's called a frame of mind.
Yeah.
So I actually feel sorry for rich kids. I mean, I have friends whose parents gave them everything, not friends, but relatives. They're completely worthless. They're just mommy's boys, fat, sloppy, you know. They got no fire in them. I'm a U.S. Marine. Like I said, I joined the Marine Corps not because I'm a nice guy. I went to Vietnam because I wanted to go with guys who want to kill people. If I wanted to save people, I joined the Coast Guard. If you can think in those categories, and the reason I went to Vancouver is because everybody said, that's the most dangerous place on earth. I said, I belong there. I've got to go. I've got to go meet those guys. And they're great guys. I mean, most are crooks, but they're great guys. You know? I had so much fun. It doesn't mean you have to be like them. Keep your ethics, morals, and integrity in there. But man, those are smart guys. It's better than somebody who's a public servant and is waiting for 20 years and has got a wife and 3 kids, or whatever the case is. Not my kind of friend.
Sure.
So I hang out with, like Gammon. Gammon's a wild man. I love him. Kenny McElroy is a wild man. All my friends are just entrepreneurs. So you are the people you hang out with. I'm not saying I hang out with, you should hang out with. But right now, ask yourself, I've asked this call for a lot of people, who do you hang out with today? Mm-hmm. Are they fat slobs just sucking down Molsons and eating potato chips? Or are the guys hustling around, working out, having a good time? You really are a reflection of your friends around you.
I love that. And you know what, that does make it relative, because when I think about, I guess, how I approach the market,
I'm just thinking about some of the characters I met in Vancouver. I love those guys. I love them. Biggest bullshit artists I've ever met.
Right. I would never ask you to name names, but I'm so curious how many of these individuals I know. But
I know. They're fun.
It's I approach this like with a holistic nature, right? When people ask me like, what are the habits required? How do you become an investor? How do you become a great investor? All this stuff. And, I don't know the answers to this stuff. I interview people to try to get to those answers. And I just steal as much as I can from yourself and from people like Peter Schiff and whoever else, Jeff Snyder and Marion Katusa and sort of the legends in the business, and I take as much of their perspective as I can and craft my own strategy. But, I always recommend it goes beyond market research, right? Everything you just said. Now, I wasn't in the Vietnam War. I've never flown a fighter jet, but, what I can do, therefore, in my position, being born in peacetime in an affluent country and a predictable government, all this stuff, you can still work hard at being good at discomfort, right? And doing hard things, whether that's just as simple as, getting up at 4:30 in the morning and hitting the gym, practicing habits that most people aren't comfortable maintaining. Right. Separating yourself from the herd in that way, because I find that really impacts my critical decision making. When I'm looking at the same thing that everybody else is looking at, how can I make sure I'm seeing it differently, right? And approaching it differently. Well, think different. You got to act different. So do different things, weird things, right? Outlier things, outlier habits, all that.
Jay, like this guy, Marion Katusa, man, that's one of the smartest guys I've ever met. 100%. He is unfreaking believable. And he's a Vancouver kid.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when I talk to him, when I talk to my Marine friends, we could be 50 years apart, but there is this camaraderie.
Yeah.
That So when I talk to guys from Vancouver, there's a love affair there. Because we know we've gone to battle together.
Yeah. And Aaron,
when I talk to my friend who's a 401k, no compadre here. I don't understand you. You don't understand me. Yeah. He wants his 401k. He wants his job security. He wants the stock market to keep going up. He has his house and his 3 kids and a dog. That's his choice. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's not my choice. I think I want to say it's either a fire in your belly or it's not. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If you don't have it, you don't have it. It's not right or wrong. You just don't have it.
And
like, I couldn't be a ping pong player. I mean, I just couldn't get all sexually stimulated. Today I'm going to practice ping pong for another 5 hours. I'm a rugby player.
Yeah.
So that's why I used to go to Vancouver and play rugby against what we call the cheeseheads. We'll go up to Vancouver, we're going to pound on the cheeseheads. It was all the Canadians up there. And we just loved it. It was the most high experience. We get drunk, beat the shit out of each other, and just keep going. Now, if you don't have that fire in your belly, play ping pong.
or
Not right or wrong. I just don't get excited about ping pong.
I'm with you. And all I would say to that is if you're looking for that, you got to find people that have it. And
it's in your gut. It's inside of you. It's already inside of you. And be true to that.
But you are very much a consequence of your surroundings. And you talked about Marin Katusa. For anybody who's not familiar, he's a Vancouver guy. I think he's probably the largest independent financier in the junior resource sector, self-made, came from, the east side of Vancouver, rough neighborhood, Croatian immigrant. When now people know him as a hedge fund manager, newsletter writer, all of this.
He's so far beyond that, man. He is so far. He is down the road.
Yeah, very much.
Way down the road. He's a leader right now.
But it's his mentality, right? And when I first met Marin, it was Rick Rule who introduced me. And the words he used is Marin's a street fighter, and Marin's not a street fighter, but the mentality of a street fighter. He's a scrappy, gritty, get it done guy.
He's got the fire in the belly.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there's only one fire. There's different fires. Like I'm a rugby player. I went out for soccer. I couldn't stand it. I said, how can you not hit the son of a bitch?
Right.
And soccer players, they fall down if you just wave at them. So I just couldn't stand it. Well, a rugby player wants to hit somebody. When we played Tongans and Samoans, I thought I died and went to heaven, Well, Tongans and Samoans, they got no nerve endings and they're fast and they're strong. Sure. And then when we played the cheeseheads in Canada, you guys, it was so much fun because the parties were always the best.
Right.
But it's the fire in the belly that brings you together. That's what brought Marines together.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to fight. I went to the recruiting office. This is in the 60s. And they had the Army there, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, and Coast Guard. And the Coast Guard guy says up there, says, we save people's lives. And the Marine stood up there and says, we kill them. He says, you want to save people? Join the fucking Coast Guard. He says, you want to kill people? Join the Marines. It's that clear. You got to have it in your guts. That's why I went to Vancouver, because everybody said it was the most dangerous place on earth. And that's when I talked to Marin. There's a brotherhood there. I talked to you. There's a brotherhood. We understand it. We know the game. It's not ping pong. You got to love it or get out.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I mean, there's been so many takeaways in this conversation, Robert, and at the highest level, I mean, it reaffirms the importance of sovereign thought, right? Yeah. Thinking for yourself, stepping outside the realm of normalcy and questioning everything, right?
Your friends. Who's your friends,
And who are you surrounded by? The most important, and I take such a critical eye to that on a regular basis to ensure, like, who are my last 5 phone calls? Who did I talk to most frequently this week, right? Is it still the people that I want to be inspiring and pushing me to charge harder right now?
Yeah.
Hyper important.
All your friends, rugby players or ping pong players?
Right. Yeah. No, but it's very real.
Yeah. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with ping pong. I just don't want to play it. I don't want to be good at it.
No, just make sure you're in the circle that you want to be in, right?
Yeah. But you've got to want to be the best at it. That's the fire in the belly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's different. Please don't think there's only one way. There isn't. Everybody's individual. Everybody has their way. Like my friend's sister and trade stock options. Oh my God. How boring is that? I mean? I'm going, I'd rather be in Vancouver. It's just, that's the way it is. I couldn't sit there and go, oh, this is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The reason I was laughing, I had this guy named Damien. I think he would have stolen his mother. in Vancouver. Because I said to him, God, your mother's hot. He says, you want her?
What?
So I just said, but we'd sit there as men and laugh. I mean, it wasn't good, bad, indifferent. It's not this woke or cancel culture and all this stuff. It's just being real. So this is the game.
Yeah.
We're going on the field. We're going to play rugby. We're going to kick ass. If you don't want to play, get off.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's it. That's life.
Look,
I don't recommend what I do. I don't recommend doing what you do or Marin, but it's a great place to come from.
It is, absolutely. And as you know, like the entrepreneurial world, you have likely far more bad days than good days, but hopefully the good days outweigh the bad days, right? And if not in number, in significance. And that's what keeps driving us forward. Look, Robert, I'm so grateful you made the time to come on the show. It was
thank you.
Great connecting with you. As you know, we run conferences in Vancouver. I'd love to bring you out, run down memory lane.
Yeah, as long as I don't have to go through that COVID bullshit. So,
yeah, we're dealing with that. All right. Well,
that's a smoke screen, man. That's a smoke screen if I ever saw one. I think COVID is to cover up the crash that's coming.
You think so?
Yep. It's going to be a big crash, and they're going to blame it. They're going to blame it on COVID. Just like right now, they're blaming the reason for this Delta virus on people who don't have vaccines. So they're always going to blame somebody.
Yeah.
And I'm going, oh my God, it's all smoke screen. So that's what I learned in Vietnam, is that we were winning the war, except the press sold us down the river.
So with coronavirus, you're saying that this is potentially the scapegoat that will be used to blame on the oncoming market crash.
It happened in 1971. We took the dollar off the gold standard.
Yeah.
And today they're pumping $120 billion a month into the market to keep it from floating. As George Gammon says, it's like this. You have this market, you have a little balloon, right? The hot air balloon, and got this little gondola. Well, generally, the little gondola should be the stock market or the bond market, whatever it is. Today, this is the market.
Yeah.
And you and I and everybody else are hanging right here, and this baby is going to come down.
Sure.
And I think they're going to blame it on Corona. It's like a magician show. You know what I mean? Hey, watch this hand, watch this hand, watch this hand, as you're picking your pocket with the other.
Yeah.
That happened to me in Vietnam. We're kicking ass. Marines were kicking ass, and they put us out. They hung us out to dry as baby killers. We were doing our job. So I have no respect for the media or the press. That's why I see on channels like yours and all that. Hope we don't get deplatformed. But we walk the edge right now because of censorship, freedom of speech. But I think coronavirus, I don't doubt it's real. I don't doubt it's killed people. But I think it's to keep people off what's really going on, which is a crash in the market that's coming. It's my opinion. No proof.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it does tie back to some earlier things you shared about just the fact that there's always a game being played behind the scenes, right?
Well, Buffett says if you sit at the poker table after 20 minutes, you don't know who the patsy is.
Sure.
You're the patsy. I've been the patsy many times.
That's how you learn.
Especially in Vancouver. That's why I love it there. It's so exciting.
Oh my God. That's so funny. Okay. I love that. Look, I want to thank you again. It's been great. You're super fun to talk to, Robert. Great perspective. And I really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Keep up the good work. I mean, you really are, you are informing people straight. Let them make up their own decision. Is there inflation or deflation? But I think you should be prepared for depression right now. Who cares?
Okay.
Because you'll make more money in depression. It's going to be a long one. The last depression lasted 25 years, 1929 to 1954. The Dow hit 381 in 1929. It took to 1954 in World War II to get back to 381. 25 years last depression. Okay, so just get prepared.
I know I keep on getting us to the wrap up, but just what you just said, it's hard for people to wrap their minds around that being a possibility if you haven't lived through it before. It's so easy to say, oh, it's never happened. It's not going to happen, right? I mean, we're living through the last 15 months has been an experience, and it doesn't matter if it's never happened before. It could happen to you. But, the thought of a sustained multi-decade depression like that is tough for people to wrap their minds around because, it's not even in our generational memory. It's very difficult to relate to.
No, and this is my generation that missed the depression. My parents didn't.
Sure.
It affected the way they thought.
Yeah.
So they're into saving and all that other stuff. They'd save tin foil and all that crap because they're depression babies. So it's going to affect, and I'm just asking people to be aware, step back, take a look. Don't look at the froth of the show and the sleight of hand tricks and all this stuff. And then the most important thing is be careful who you listen to and who your friends are.
I love it.
Nothing wrong being a ping pong player, but if you don't want to be one, don't be one.
Yeah.
You got to match yourself to that fire in your belly. And everybody's fire is different. So if I can leave that message with everybody, it's going to be an exciting time.
As always, if you enjoyed this content, please hit subscribe. I'd love to have you on the team. And if you want to take the next step and go a bit deeper with my content, I publish a free weekly newsletter every Friday where I debrief my portfolio. I distill the top lessons I've uncovered from the guests I've had on this show every week. And I talk about sectors and industries that I think are poised to move, areas I'm looking for opportunity, and places that I'm allocating capital. I love writing it. We publish every Friday. The link is right beneath this video. Love to have you join the tribe.